Despite Mr. Smith's smile as he reminisced, my heart was gradually starting to beat faster. But, as you know, we can't afford to hire anyone else. It felt like a stab to the heart. Mr. Smith's eyes pierced through me. Given his education and skills, I need to prioritize my son. Could you step aside? My intuition was right. My name is Tom. I'm a 36-year-old investigator working at a research firm. I've been working tirelessly at the same firm since I graduated high school. Up until a few years ago, it was a great place to work, but after the former CEO fell ill and his son took over, things became more challenging. Aren't you done with this investigation yet? I flinched when Mr. Smith, who had approached me unnoticed, spoke. Oh, yes, I just need to check the computer files. Before I could finish, Mr. Smith interrupted impatiently. No, that's enough. It's obvious he was slacking off. He spent hours at the cafe, right? I'm currently investigating a salesperson. The company hired us to look into his work habits. In short, to see if he was slacking off. I don't know what will happen to this man once I report he was slacking. But it won't be good. But, he had his laptop open at the cafe. If he was researching work-related topics or using work apps, that counts as work. We need to confirm that. I mumbled in defense, but Mr. Smith sighed. I need you to be more efficient. Just as Mr. Smith seemed ready to start lecturing me, the office intercom buzzed. Our receptionist answered, and it was Heather, the lawyer. She is slender, with a great figure and posture. Her slightly sharp eyes looked striking, with perfectly lined double eyelids. A beautiful nose bridge and thin, firmly set lips. She usually tied back her straight, long black hair, but today it was down. In short, she was stunning. Smart enough to be a lawyer, with a great figure, and beautiful to boot. What gifts hadn't heaven given her? I was momentarily captivated, but when Heather started walking towards me, I snapped back to reality and hurriedly rummaged through my desk. She had come to pick up my investigation report. We often conduct investigations for her firm. Heather has been a regular client since she first used our services a year ago. Is it ready? She asked in a beautiful voice, and I responded nervously. Yes. Right here. When I handed the envelope to Heather, she widened her eyes in surprise. Since there were many subjects to investigate this time, the report had become quite thick. Heather took out the contents of the envelope and flipped through them. Then she said, "Thank you. Here, take this for the next one," and handed me a file. If you have any questions, just contact me. Bye. With that, she swiftly turned on her heel and left. As I watched her walk away, captivated, I sensed a slight chuckle from Mr. Smith. She was surprised by that thick envelope. She must be exasperated. It's a lot to read through. But I don't see it that way. After all, she's given me the next assignment. If she wasn't satisfied with my work, she would have given it to someone else. Unless I'm busy, Heather always gives the job to me. It might be pride, but I believe she appreciates my work. Heather must also support the policies of the former CEO. That's because the reason I work meticulously is due to the words of him. When we get a request, investigate thoroughly. Even if it ends up being unfavorable for the lawyer. Every person has their rights. And our findings might affect their life. We can't afford mistakes or premature conclusions. I was deeply moved by this principle. Our work could impact someone's life. We can't conduct sloppy investigations. However, recently, the pressure from Mr. Smith has been particularly strong. All the other employees are yes men to him, and they all seem to be the efficient type. The former CEO used to favor me, but now I feel out of place. So, I've been losing a bit of confidence that Heather truly values my work. Amid these days, I was called to the CEO's office. I braced myself for another reprimand, but Mr. Smith began to reminisce. Do you remember my son? Mr. Smith's son is the grandson of the former CEO. When I joined the company, he was still in kindergarten, and we often met at company barbecues. He was a mischievous child, and since I had just graduated high school, I often played with him. Those were good times. You're talking about Ryan, right? We used to play a lot together. Mr. Smith nodded slightly at my words. Yes, exactly. He's graduating from college this year. Time flies. I was surprised. Really? It's been that long? Mr. Smith gave a wry smile at my reaction. Yeah, we're all getting older. We shared a laugh. But then, Mr. Smith's smile disappeared. With a sigh, he looked straight at me. Ryan wants to join our company. The words in his expression sent a cold sweat down my back. Ryan's always been smart. He got into a decent college without much studying, and even though he seemed to be having fun all the time, his grades were good. For him to say he wants to join our company, as a parent, I'm surprised and happy. Mr. Smith's slightly bashful smile contrasted with the increasing pace of my heartbeat. But, as you know, we can't afford to hire anyone else. It felt like a stab to the heart. Mr. Smith's eyes pierced through me. Given his education and skills, I need to prioritize my son. Could you step aside? My intuition was right. Honestly, I wanted to hold on. For 18 years since I graduated high school, this is the only job I've known. At 36, I can't afford to be picky about job hunting. Even though my current company isn't comfortable, the pay is good. But I pictured Ryan's face. The mischievous kid who would innocently beg for piggyback rides. And Mr. Smith's proud smile as a father. I know I'm being too kind at a time like this. But once I pictured Ryan, my mind was made up. I understand. I still have some investigations to finish, so would a month from now be okay for my resignation? Mr. Smith's eyes widened, and he apologized. I'm sorry. I'll add more to your severance pay. With a furrowed brow, I left his office. 1 month later. Today is my last day. I focused on my work, trying not to think about anything else. I wanted to finish all my remaining investigations and leave without any loose ends. I wanted to complete my work properly. The office intercom buzzed, and Heather appeared. The thought that today might be the last time I see her made me quite sad. When I handed her the report she had requested, she said, "Thanks. So next is," and began to assign me the next job as usual. I interrupted her politely. "I'm sorry, but today is my last day." Saying so, Heather exclaimed, "What?" in a bewildered voice. I had never heard such a tone from her before. We'd rarely had casual conversations. She was always the perfect lawyer. I was a little pleased to hear such a voice from her at the end. "So, please give that assignment to someone else." Before I could finish, Heather cut me off with a direct "Why?" I fumbled. "Well," as I searched for an excuse, Mr. Smith interjected. "We don't have enough room right now." Heather glanced at Mr. Smith, who gave a wry smile. She then looked back at me. "Have you already packed your things?" I was puzzled by the strange question. "Well, yes. I just have myself to take home." Hearing this, Heather glanced at her watch. "There's 30 minutes left until the end of the day. You don't have any more work, right?" Seeing my lack of response, she looked at Mr. Smith. With a confused expression, he answered, "Yes, that's correct." Then, Heather smirked. "Great. Let's go. You're Tom, right?" I was startled to hear my first name. "Ha?" Confused, I frowned. "I'll take him. I need an assistant." "Is that all right?" Heather beamed at Mr. Smith with a radiant smile. And with that, she took my hand and led me towards the office entrance. "Wait, what about the next assignment?" Mr. Smith managed to ask about work. Heather turned back sharply. "If I have Tom, I won't need to hire you guys anymore." She stated this firmly, and without pausing again, she exited the office. I followed her, leaving the company I had worked at for 18 years. After walking for a while, Heather let go of my hand. She stopped, turned to face me, and said, "So, from now on, I'm counting on you, Tom, as my paralegal. The pay will be good." Her beautiful smile was dazzling. "Paralegal? What do you mean?" I asked, still unable to grasp the situation. "You know what a paralegal is, right? An assistant to a lawyer. The paralegal I had until a year ago became a lawyer, and I haven't been able to find anyone as good since. Everyone at the office is busy. So I started relying on your company, she explained, looking up at the window of the research firm I had worked at. Nobody else was useful. I've been wanting to poach you, but that office is small, and any talk like that would get out. I had never sensed such intentions in our professional interactions. But, did you really value my work? When I spoke, overwhelmed with emotion, Heather smiled. Of course. That's why I kept asking for you. Your work was thorough, and you understood the client's situation well, sometimes too empathetic. Which was a bit troublesome, but overall excellent. I was very satisfied. Her words warmed my heart. My belief that she appreciated my work wasn't just my imagination. I appreciated deeply. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you. Heather looked surprised by my enthusiastic response, then laughed heartily. I had never seen her laugh like this, and it made me blush. In that moment, I fell for her. I decided to follow her wherever she led. 3 months after starting as Heather's paralegal, I felt more fulfilled than I ever did working under Mr. Smith. The law firm she worked at had a few lawyers and paralegals, and the atmosphere was very open. Whenever I was in trouble, someone would always help me. Sometimes, other lawyers would ask me to conduct investigations, and they all valued my work. Even though I'm shy, everyone talked to me kindly, and we often went out for drinks together. During this time, my feelings for Heather grew. She was a year older than me. She was beautiful, strong-willed, and seemed unapproachable to men. She wasn't married and didn't seem to have a boyfriend. My paralegal colleagues quickly noticed my feelings and supported me. But I worried that confessing and being rejected might ruin our current relationship and make work difficult. Another lawyer reassured me. Someone else had confessed to Heather within the office before and was rejected, but she didn't let it affect her work. The person who confessed ended up leaving because they couldn't handle it. So maybe, just maybe, it would be okay. I wasn't planning on giving up just because of one rejection. I was ready to continue loving her for years, until she outright rejected me. I was looking for an opportunity to express my feelings, and it came sooner than expected. After winning a big case, we went out to celebrate. Heather never mixed work and personal life, and I had never been invited out for a meal. I felt it would be presumptuous to invite her. Even though it was an extension of work, it was the first time we would be alone together after hours. I decided to confess right away during the toast. Heather, I like you. Before taking a sip of beer, I said this. Heather looked shocked. You're not drunk, right? I hadn't touched my beer yet. No. I thought if I said it after drinking, you might doubt my sincerity, so I decided to say it first. When I said this plainly, Heather looked confused. Are you unexpectedly experienced in love? Confessing so suddenly. I responded earnestly. No. I didn't expect to get a yes from just one confession, so I wanted to let you know my feelings, even if I got rejected. Heather burst out laughing at my answer. What's that? You're assuming you'll get rejected? I nodded yes vigorously. Because, you're beautiful, have a great figure, are amazing at your job, you're a perfect woman. I feel it's presumptuous of me to even have these feelings for you. But on the day I was let go from that research company, you picked me up. To me, you're like a goddess. I don't think I'll ever fall in love with anyone else. So, until you tell me I'm bothering you, I'll keep expressing my feelings. Heather blushed. Honestly, I didn't think my words would make her blush, so I was a bit surprised. So, what if I tell you that you're bothering me? What would you do then? I looked down slightly. I would keep my feelings to myself without telling you. I don't want to quit my job. So, I would be grateful if you could forget this ever happened. Imagining her saying I was a bother almost brought tears to my eyes. But Heather laughed. Then let's date. I was so shocked by her easy acceptance that my eyes nearly popped out. Because, if you keep saying it and keep feeling it, it would be troublesome. You should see how difficult it is to date me. Even if it doesn't work out, don't quit your job, okay? I wondered if beautiful, straightforward women thought differently. Was there an option to just date for now? As I was in a daze, Heather pouted slightly. It's not like I say yes to just anyone, okay? I've been a bit interested in you, Tom. She said this while turning away, her ears red. Feeling the reality of her acceptance, I had the best drink of my life that night. Heather was indeed a very demanding woman. I don't have much experience to compare, but when she was focused on work, she wouldn't contact me, but when her work settled down, she would call me every night to chat for about 2 hours. She was dedicated to self-improvement, and even though I joined the same gym, our workout routines were completely different. So we usually exercised separately. She was strong with alcohol, never getting drunk or losing composure. But when we were alone at my place, she would show a sweet, affectionate side. I found everything about her adorable, and whenever she said, "You've had enough of me, right? You can break up with me anytime," I would shake my head vigorously and hug her tightly. She had become an irreplaceable, precious part of my life. After a year of dating, I proposed to her. Heather's face twisted in such a way that I thought she was going to reject me. "Are you serious? Marrying me?" Even when I'm at home, I'm constantly thinking about cases. Honestly, during those times, I want to be alone and not talk to anyone. I chuckled. "I know. We've been together for a year, so I know everything. I want to marry you and be with you forever." Heather looked down. "I never thought I could get married." Then she looked up with a smile. "There's no turning back now, you know?" Those words and her smile finally made me feel at ease. Heather had lost her mother to illness when she was in elementary school and was raised in a single-parent household. Her father had given up on her getting married because of her strong personality. And he was deeply moved and shed tears when we told him about our engagement. My parents were also surprised that their shy son was marrying such a beautiful woman. Both families blessed our union. And we began preparing for the wedding. Although Heather felt that a lavish wedding and reception were embarrassing due to our age, I insisted on seeing her in a wedding dress. And she agreed to the ceremony. However, the wedding planning took a lot of time. Even just choosing the venue was a hassle, and there were so many other decisions to make that it was exhausting. It was exhausting, but also full of happiness. After one of the many meetings with the wedding coordinator, Heather and I decided to have a drink at a bar. It was a night where her work had finally settled down, and we could relax. Heather continued to drink. She seemed to be drinking more than usual. Her eyes became slightly glazed as she suddenly began to speak. "When my mother passed away when I was in elementary school, I felt very lonely." It was rare for Heather to talk about her past. Growing up in a single-parent household was challenging, and she had always felt the absence of her mother, making her childhood memories something she rarely shared. Thinking she might have had too much to drink, I considered suggesting we head home early, but I listened as she continued. "The lady next door, she was very kind to me. My father came home always late, you know? So when I came home from school, she would invite me over and make homemade snacks." This neighbor and her husband had no children of their own, and after Heather lost her mother, they treated her like their own daughter. The story warmed my heart, but Heather's expression grew sadder. "But when I was in middle school, they got divorced. The lady moved away. I understood, but it was heartbreaking. I was in my rebellious phase and, using busyness as an excuse, I almost never saw her again. On the last day, she rang our doorbell multiple times. But I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't want her to see me crying." Tears welled up in her eyes. "If I ever see her again, I want to thank her. She taught me so many things my father couldn't, took me shopping. She was so kind to me. And I couldn't even say goodbye properly. It's awful, isn't it?" I found myself tearing up too. "What was her name?" I asked. Heather pulled a piece of paper from her bag. It was a letter from the lady to Heather. The paper was yellowed and torn in places, showing how much it had been cherished. "Samantha Green." The letter had been placed in their mailbox on the last day. The new address and phone number were listed there. Heather had stubbornly refused to contact her, but when she and her father moved for her high school, she sent a letter. But the letter came back marked address unknown. The phone number was also no longer in service. I should have contacted her sooner. Heather said that and collapsed onto the table. She seemed to be dozing off. It was the first time I had seen her this drunk, so I quickly called a taxi to take us home. As we looked out at the night scenery, I made a decision. Several months passed. Today was our wedding day. Heather looked stunning in her pure white wedding dress, and I was nearly in tears from the start. She gazed at her reflection and said, "I never thought I'd see myself in a wedding dress," still seemingly unaccustomed to the idea of marriage, making me chuckle. But when she said, "From now on, please take care of me, my darling," her cuteness knocked me out. We concluded the garden wedding and moved on to the reception. As we entered the reception hall, we were greeted with resounding applause. When we reached the main table, the hall lights brightened. When I looked at the host, he nodded in agreement deeply. And now, we have a surprise present from the groom to the bride. Hearing this, Heather turned sharply towards me. "Now, isn't this usually done at the end?" she muttered, to which I just smiled silently. "Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the entrance." A spotlight illuminated the door we had just entered through. Maybe I overdid it a bit. As expected, the woman standing there was blushing deeply and looking down. Heather stood up in disbelief. No way. Tears were already welling up in her eyes. Standing in the spotlight, wearing a black nice dress, was Samantha, the woman who had been a significant figure in Heather's childhood. Since hearing Heather's story, I had spent every spare moment looking for her. When I worked at the investigation company, I did countless searches for people. It's one of my areas of expertise. This time, I had some clues and knew her name, which made it somewhat easier. Although it would have been better if the surname or name had been more distinctive. Starting from the old address, I tracked down Samantha's current location step by step. I didn't mind if I couldn't find her in time for the wedding, but fortunately, I found her relatively quickly. The moment I mentioned Heather, she burst into tears. It was clear why someone like her had taken care of Heather after she lost her mother. My own tears welled up too. After parting ways with Heather, Samantha had rented an apartment near her family home but returned to care for her sick father. She had hesitated to write to Heather with her new address because, after sending several letters with no response, she thought Heather must have grown to dislike her. Learning of Heather's feelings, she regretted giving up on her. After that, I kept in touch with Samantha secretly and arranged for her to attend the wedding. I wanted her to be there as a surrogate mother for Heather at the reception. We changed the chapel ceremony to a garden wedding. This was so Samantha could see Heather from a distance. Heather had questioned the sudden change. But the wedding planner suggested that a garden wedding would be more beautiful on a sunny day at a seaside venue than an indoor chapel. This search was a bit of a struggle. But seeing the joyous reunion of Heather and Samantha made it all worth it. The host explained the situation to the guests, and I could hear the sound of people sniffling. Of course, I was already in tears myself. After their reunion, Samantha took her seat for the reception. On the way back to our seats, with a handkerchief given by the wedding planner, Heather complained, "How could you? My makeup is ruined already. And the reception has just started." But I smiled through my tear-stained face. I wanted Samantha to enjoy the reception from start to finish. Having already cried once, I couldn't help but shed more tears. Heather noticed and gently wiped my eyes with a handkerchief, saying, "I love this gentle side of you," with a smile. As we sat at our table and looked around the room, everyone was smiling. Friends, family, and all the people who had supported us. Surrounded by these warm smiles, I felt truly happy from the bottom of my heart.